Carbon bus tours form part of the larger Young Carbon Farmers project that we at Sefton and Associates are proud to be managing in partnership with the Future Farmers Network. The project is supported by funding from the Australian Government. The Carbon Bus Tour is an exciting opportunity for engaged and enthusiastic young farmers and agricultural professionals to explore climate variability, emissions, adaptation and CFI research through unparalleled access to this country's leaders in emission research and on-farm adaptation. Through this North Queensland tour within the Townsville and Charters Towers regions, 11 carefully selected participants visited the CSIRO Lansdown Research Station, Wambiana grazing trial, the cattle production enterprises at the Trafalgar Station and Wambiana Station properties. This short video provides an insight into the presentations and tours presented by our experts. For further information and access to the presentations, please go to the website featured at the end of this video.
I'll try to give an overview of the interconnection between agriculture and climate in this part of the world. The key land use across the north is extensive grazing by beef cattle, horticulture, so mangoes, bananas, and of course sugarcane. If you can better manage the existing climate variability, you're going to be in a position to better manage climate change. When you talk about how do you respond to the impacts of climate change in terms of adaptation, it is why you need the right policy settings around drought, having technologies there, for example, plant breeding for a future climate. A lot of it comes down to adaptive capacity and behaviours and management.
My name's Michael Waring and I farm sugarcane in the Ingham district. In the last 6 years we have changed the way we grow sugarcane and our main aim is to improve our soil health. I lead a project called Project Catalyst. It is about supporting cane growers that have innovative ideas that they're trialling on their farms. We also create networks of innovative growers. When their project is proven as a good project, we showcase those ideas to industry.
Yeah, my presentation today is about northern horticultural tree crops and their importance for climate change and sustainability. Horticulture in the north is very important. Agriculture in far north Queensland is worth about $1 billion a year to the local economy, and in central and north Queensland is probably about the same. There's three main objectives which are all actually quite closely linked: combating climate change, reef water quality remediation, and economically sustainable agriculture. And that's where environmental and economic sustainability all comes together, and that's how we can all move forward to get the outcomes that we want. The two main areas that have common ground are this increasing soil carbon percentage and developing a healthier soil. We're interested in increasing soil carbon percentage for carbon sequestration purposes. But of course that's got many other benefits to the farmer as far as improving their health of their soils and increasing their productivity and profitability. Most obvious effects of climate change on tropical horticulture, as in the last 5-8 years, have been our massive cyclones that we've just experienced. The first was Tropical Cyclone Larry in 2006, followed up by Tropical Cyclone Yassi in 2011. With tree crops, it's a lot more serious than annual crops. It's actually taken a long time to develop those trees to where they are. It might have been 8 years of lead up. You're just starting to get your first commercial yields, and now they've been levelled. I've also worked in forestry, as has Daryl Killen, our next speaker, and to see tens of thousands of hectares of forestry, some of it was 35, 40 years old, ready to be harvested the next year, levelled, it was quite devastating for everyone concerned.
What it comes down to, there's two ways you can earn carbon credits. You can reduce emissions or you can lock up carbon. So carbon sequestration, locking up carbon, drawing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, whereas emissions reduction just reduces the amount of emissions going to the atmosphere. This is the most important message you get from me today. Don't do anything innovative until you benchmark what you were doing in the past, because you won't get credited the improvement.
Research in the last 4 or 5 years has been directed around greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane from livestock. Queensland as a state is a huge emitter of methane from beef cattle because our numbers of beef cattle are so high relative to any other state. Roughly about half of the agricultural emissions in Queensland, the Territory and parts of WA are coming from the beef herds. The challenge for our industry is what can we do to maintain productivity and at the same time reduce that methane emission. The research challenges that we face in the north is how do you measure this thing? How do we generate those statistics to demonstrate we've actually had an effect? The goal here is mitigation. You can't mitigate until you can measure. So where we're at now is we started out supporting the carbon farming initiative around measurement, monitoring, mitigation with the goal of methodologies. But the question is, adoption. How do we get producers to adopt? Productivity is the goal and the abatement is actually a co-benefit to that goal. As you increase production efficiency, the methane emissions go down, and we know that we can make big improvements in emissions intensity through just better adoption of what we're already doing. Based on this data now, we're looking at redefining how we calculate methane emissions in Northern Australia for national accounting purposes. Really trying to get buy-in from the industry. Productivity is the goal. If we can improve productivity in the pasture through perhaps more judicious stocking rates, we reduce the stocking rate, we have less animals, but the ones we have grow faster. You can still raise as much beef more sustainably, and you might be able to pull off a proportion of your property and put it into trees and get a carbon benefit from a forestry methodology.
Early emphasis on climate adaptation has been about describing the potential impacts and understanding the causes. So there are three main themes that I'll look to cover: how we respond to climate change and how we do that in a way that makes us less vulnerable. So mitigation itself will need to be adaptive to those changing climates. Some things that might make sense as a mitigation measure under current climate might not work as well under a hotter, drier climate or a hotter, wetter climate.
Welcome everybody, this is our animal house. This is where we measure methane in these chambers, and we can measure quite a bit about what's going on in terms of how the animal's interacting with its feed.
Here we've got 12 animals, and I've currently got them on quite a poor quality hay that's sort of mimicking the dry season forage. Those animals will then be split into groups that will either have a fairly high quality feed, a pasture, or a hay, and we're hoping to get from this is a bit of a clearer picture about the effect of seasonal change, extensive agriculture on emissions in beef.
Essentially it's just an airtight box with an inlet, so we're drawing air in from outside and then sucking air out, and it goes through into this room next door where the concentration of methane is measured.
I'd like to welcome you all to Wambiana. It's been the centre of the family business for 102 years. Wambiana is 57,000 acres. It's a good mix of country which we breed and fatten on. We run Brahman cattle because they suit the environment well, and they are easy care and easy sell. If a property is ecologically sound, economically viable and socially responsible, it is sustainable into the long term.
We see ourselves as grass farmers first and foremost because grass is the foundation of our business, and how we manage the grass will be rewarded in the beef that we produce. And we do this by matching the stocking rate of the cattle to the carrying capacity of the country. Work with nature and not against it. This quote probably sums up our generation's approach. So whilst we are not primarily focused on farming carbon, it is our understanding that by employing our management practices that promote healthy soils and grasses, we are in our own way contributing to the task of sensibly managing the carbon in the natural resource that's under our stewardship.
The real focus of this project is looking at how you actually fit in carbon farming into a beef business. It's not actually saying we're going to go all to carbon or all to cattle. It's actually trying to find where those win-win situations are. It's the 7th largest beef industry in the world, and there's about 14 million head across 250 million hectares of land use across Northern Australia. Whatever management change people need to take on, it needs to be very carefully considered to ensure it's got appropriate productivity, profitability and environmental outcomes. So the Climate Clever Beef project is about evaluating carbon farming project options, and the focus is on livestock methane, on soil carbon and also on the regrowth. Compared to the moderate stocking rate treatment, the high stocking rate has more livestock emissions, less forage biomass and also a bit less soil carbon on average across the paddock. But overall, the inventory was dominated by the woody vegetation change and fire cycles. It's going to be more profitable for people to keep improving their properties and improving food productivity, likely to be increasing their emissions at the same time. So it's going to be very much focused on reducing the emissions intensity. And improving herd efficiency, reducing the greenhouse gas intensity should be the goal for all beef businesses, because that's the real win-win. In the future for the industry, it's not so much about making a fortune out of carbon farming, but it's about demonstrating to the rest of the world that Northern Australia or Australia's beef is operating as efficiently as it can and is better than other parts of the world, and that's going to be its marketing advantage for the industry into the future.
Rainfall variability is a major issue for management throughout Northern Australia. Adjusting your numbers based on how the rainfall goes. A major thing that we've identified is this belief that to be profitable, you need a lot of cattle. Our major objective of the trial is to look at different grazing strategies objectively and empirically on the same type of country under the same rainfall. When we started the trial 16 years ago, based on consultation with graziers and scientists, we selected 5 grazing strategies to test in a variable climate. These strategies were run largely unchanged till 2011. We went to a lot of trouble, and particularly John Bushell, in laying out these paddocks so that the proportion of the different land types is basically similar in all the paddocks. This graph is just showing total yields measured at the end of the wet season last year. There's a huge difference in yield between the moderate and the rotational spell and the heavy stocking rate. It's about 4 to 5 times difference in yield. With our steers on the trial, these are the total weight gains averaged over the last 16 years. The greatest individual live weight gain has been under the moderate stocking rate and the lowest under the heavy stocking rate. The more ground an animal has got to graze from, the better it's going to do, because it gets a higher diet quality. We worked out the gross margins of each treatment. We took the total amount of beef produced in each year, and then we just subtracted the cost. So coming out after 16 years, you can see a massive difference in accumulated gross margin between the heavy and these other treatments. Our results, we would recommend flexible stocking using your long-term carrying capacity as a baseline. So you'd be very cautious about cranking your numbers up, cut them down at the first sign of a drought. It's obvious that regular wet season spelling is important. The appropriate use of fire, just suppressing the woody component.
We practice adaptive management, which is preempting or responding quickly to variable climatic conditions. But at the same time, the hard part is maximising your herd productivity and getting some profitability out of it while looking after the natural resource. External drivers that affect our businesses: climate, prices, globalisation and government policy, none of which we can control. Main drivers that we can control, and these are the ones we mainly focus on, are the internal drivers, the personal goals and aspirations, natural resource management, financial management and our herd management. I'm a firm believer that unless we get our management right, especially with animal welfare and natural resource management, it'll be hard to get market access in years to come. When we made our change of management in '87, our herd size was about 4,300, and then 2009 was about 3,300, so less numbers overall, but higher weaning percentage and earlier turn-off age at the same weight. We've reduced our methane emissions by about 46%. My greatest belief is if you stay ahead of the game, if you manage your natural resources properly, you manage your welfare systems properly and your human resource systems properly, you'll be that far ahead of the game, you don't have to worry about regulation. But the key to the whole system is knowledge, and unless you equip yourself with the skills and the knowledge of how to manage all those systems and those integrated systems, you're not going to survive.
Basically all our southern part of our place is all still in its native condition. They're all small paddocks, they're only around about the 5 to 600, 800 hectares. We use it for our stud cattle and weaners. In the breeding season we stock it around a beast to 8 hectares. At the end of the year it's usually stocked at about a beast to 4 hectares. So it's pretty heavy stocking. Even though we're putting a heavy stocking rate, we're not actually increasing our total numbers, because we use that to be able to spell the native country much more readily and therefore look after the native pastures as well. Because we changed our management, we were one of the few properties in the area in the 90s drought that had a lot of grass. By having that grass and those options available to you, we've made a lot more money in drought times than we have in good times. So yeah, for all you young farmers out there, stick to your plans.
This trip's very important for me to come up and see what's happening on a broader scale with carbon.
Something about the climate that's always changing, so we need to be ready for that's coming through.
I've got a much clearer understanding of the policy and how that's going to affect the producer on the land.
It doesn't matter if you're in grazing or any other farming commodity, it's yeah, there's definitely people who are leading the way.
All of the carbon, the nitrous oxides, the methane and the carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere in agriculture represents an inefficiency.
If we don't do something now, there's a real chance that we're going to be in strife.
I'm hoping, you know, my generation will be able to get in and give it a real good shot.
It's been great to learn about how it's all interconnected, that what we do as humans, where it goes, how we can actually adapt to the changing climate.
Everyone's going to take this back to their communities, and that there is a future in agriculture of Australia.
It's just great to see farmers giving back to the environment, you know.
We've got this 150, 200 year culture of agriculture. It's time for the young people to step up.